Lester?
Okay.
And in about 10 seconds, I think we can begin. And as they say, action.
What is your full name?
Ervin.
The protocol is the date.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
Okay.
didn't know that. Okay. Today is Wednesday, October.
Ervin.
Wait a second, wait a second.
Today is Wednesday, October 13th, 2004. My name is Leslie Yuso.
Is what?
My name
Leslie?
is Leslie Yuso.
Oh, yes, who told me?
Exactly. Okay. And now, what is your full name?
What's your full name, Daddy?
Ervin Hansher.
Was it changed at all when you
No,
came?
I didn't.
No. Okay. And does the name have a special kind of meaning?
What, does your name have a special kind of meaning? You could talk about how you got the name Ervin.
No, not that I remember.
Okay. And when and where were you born?
I was born on 10th and Sherman,
Mm-hmm.
which was, it was first 10th and Vine.
Okay.
Later it was 10th and Sherman. They changed the name. That's right in the heart of the Jewish neighborhood.
And when were you born?
October 1st, 1912.
So that makes you
What?
How old are you?
I'm 92.
Okay. And who were your first family members to settle here?
The first family members who settled in Milwaukee, or in the United States.
I had my grandparents on both sides settled in Milwaukee in the late 90s.
And what brought them here? Why did they come?
They wanted to get out of Poland.
And how did they make their living? Each of your grandparents.
My one grandfather, they were more in the produce work, both of them,
And somebody had a fair. Remember, someone had a carnival.
later on.
That was later. Well, you can talk about that. That was
No,
interesting.
that's later, that's not parents, that's,
Grandparents.
Where were your parents born? And where did they grow up?
both were born in Poland.
Okay. And how did they make their living?
My father was he sold produce, retail.
Okay. And did they ever tell you how their growing up period was?
They what?
Did they ever talk to you about how they grew up, how your parents grew up?
They both grew up on farms in Poland. In near a little town called Senit, S-C-N-I, Senit.
Okay. How was it for you when you were growing up? What kind of a neighborhood did you grow up in?
I lived in a Jewish neighborhood. It was more or less the ghetto.
That was where you were born.
That's where I was born.
But
Well, then I lived there until I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
And
Did your family belong to a synagogue?
Yes, my grandfather, Hansher, both of them were originators of Beth Israel.
Okay. And so did you go to synagogue often?
Yes, with my
Okay.
grandfather.
Was it was it important in your
What?
was it important in your family?
Yes, the synagogue was Beth Israel. It was on 4th and Cherry then.
Were you comfortable in being Jewish? Was it a problem in your neighborhood, or
Not
was
in
it
the
very?
neighborhood, but
was
later
it-
on it was.
Can you tell me a little something about that?
Well, when I was first in the neighborhood, we had the Abraham Lincoln House. Are you interested in that?
Yes.
That's where the Abraham Lincoln House was on a block from our house. And there was a center there where all the Jewish kids, mostly Jewish kids, would go. And across the street from there was a public library, a city public library.
where was the Abraham Lincoln House, Daddy?
Abraham Lincoln House was we had meetings there, social meeting, and social workers, and some of the people who were in the society would come over there as volunteers.
Wasn't that lady?
Mr. Label, there was a Mr. Label, and a Mrs., what was her name?
The lady who wrote the settlement cookbook.
A lady had electric,
Yeah.
what's her-
Mrs. Cantor.
Mrs. Cantor.
Yeah.
She used to come and visit us in an electric
Car.
car.
That must have been something.
What?
That was something, huh?
She
So
come
was
very
that
often.
a forerunner to the JCC?
What?
Was that a forerunner to the JCC?
Yeah, but there was something in between. There was a social center on I forget what street it was. It was a Milwaukee Street. That from the Lincoln House to Milwaukee Street, which took the place of the Lincoln House, and then later on from Milwaukee Street to the JCC.
Was your family a traditional Jewish family? And in what way was it a traditional family?
They were Orthodox Jews. On my both, yes, my parents.
Were you aware of any anti-Semitism?
What?
Were you aware of any anti-Semitism outside of your neighborhood or even in your neighborhood?
Not much. I was a big guy. They were afraid of me.
When you moved away from Cherry Street, when you moved to the...
I never lived on Cherry Street,
On 10th Street.
10th Street.
But then you moved to 8th Street,
We
which,
moved to 8th Street.
how old were you then?
I was in 7th grade.
And there weren't many Jews there, right?
One of the few Jewish families. And they used to call me Jew Boy.
And I'm sure there was...
But there was no end. Later on, many of the same people were my patients.
Were you ever involved in any Jewish agencies as an adult as you got older? Like
What?
Jewish agencies, Daddy, like your fraternity.
Was involved in several.
what fraternities or
Oh, the
organizations?
Jewish welfare fund I used to be active in. And two Jewish fraternities, Alpha Epsilon Pi and Phi Delta Epsilon.
What kind of fraternities were those?
One was a medical one, Phi D was medical, and the other one was a social.
Okay. Were you a vet?
What?
Are you a war veteran?
Yes,
Can you tell me a little about your
I
experience?
spent 4 years in the war, 2 years in Europe.
Where in Europe were you stationed?
What?
Where in Europe did you...
England mostly.
And were you a physician at that time?
Yes, I was a doctor in the army.
Why don't you tell a little bit about how you ended up going into the Army, Daddy? Why don't you talk about that? That's very interesting.
Well, that was my pre-army.
Well, talk about how come you decided to go into the Army. You were too old to go in, but you volunteered. That was
I
very...
wasn't too. I volunteered for the army. That's all.
Can you tell us about your medical school, getting into medical school,
Yeah.
and any difficulties that you
Well-
faced as a
Well,
Jewish person?
It was a little bit. I went to Marquette pre-medic, and after 2.5 years, I applied for the medical school, and was accepted. I was accepted at Marquette and at the University of Wisconsin, but because of financial reasons and because I wanted to be at home, I decided to go to Marquette. It was called Marquette then. Now it's called the Medical School of Wisconsin.
So what year did you graduate from medical school?
In I finished in 36, but I finished my internship in 37.
And what kind of medicine did you practice?
What kind of medicine?
Acute and chronic medicine. I
As
was
a general
practice.
practitioner
Okay.
and a surgeon.
That's included.
And how about telling about what you did at the automotive place at
Well, that's
American
some of that.
Motors? Well, that's part of it.
Did you have it when you were a physician? After you graduated as a physician, was it difficult to get on the staff of any particular hospitals?
No. I had my internship at St. Mary's, one of the first early Jewish boys, and I spent my entire medical career at St. Mary's.
Did you ever encounter any anti-Semitism at St. Mary's?
When I first came, but once they found out I was Jewish, it was cut down to nearly zero.
In what way? What was cut down to
Well,
zero?
There used to be a lot of anti-Semitic statements in front of me. But I was one of the early Jews there, and I straightened them out a little bit.
How did you straighten them out?
Well, first of all, I was a big guy, and second of all, I let them know I was Jewish.
And so do you think it affected the way, the patients that you got? Or
What?
do you think that being Jewish had any effect on other physicians referring to you?
No,
Or
No. My association was with physicians of all faiths.
How about your practice? Did you have all different kinds of people
Yeah.
that you
Yeah, they had all kinds of,
your practice was a mixture
you know.
of all different ethnicities.
did you ever travel to Israel, or did you do much traveling in your lifetime?
Did quite a bit of traveling.
Did you connect to Israel at all?
Yeah, I was there a couple of times. One time I went with my 3 grandsons. The 4 of us went. We spent 10 days there traveling around Israel.
How did you feel about that? How did you make a connection, or did you make a connection to Israel?
Sure. Well, we were always sponsored. And one of my grandsons is going to be a rabbi in a year.
How do you see the present and the future of the Milwaukee?
What?
How do you see the present and the future of the Milwaukee Jewish community?
I have no opinion. I don't know. I have lost a lot of contact with I'm a superficial observer.
Okay. Are there any lessons in life that you have learned that have carried you through to your 92 years?
What?
Are there any lessons in your life that have carried you through
Oh.
92 years?
What are some of the lessons? What was the big lesson? You told me one that you thought was very important, that you've kept close to your heart for 92 years.
Well, I always kept my Jewishness. I remember when I was which was probably one of the bright spots to my Jewish life, was in Yom Kippur of 1944, in the middle of the war. I was invited by some Jewish friends to come to Glasgow to spend Yom Kippur with them. And we went to the temple for Kol Nidre. And the temple, the largest Jewish temple in all of Glasgow. And they called me up to hold the Torah in front of all. I was the only American in the uniform, while the cantor sang Kol Nidre. That was one of the bright spots.
How did that make you feel to be a Jew?
It felt me good then and better now.
That's funny. What are you most proud of in your 92 years? It doesn't have to be one thing, it can be several things. That your legacy, what are you most proud of in your life? You've had a long life. What
My
are some of
family.
And can you tell me a little bit about your family?
Well, that'd take a whole day to tell you about.
Just
I'm
very
proud of every
briefly.
one of them. My children and my grandchildren and my great-granddaughter, son.
Okay. Do you have any?
My parents, too.
Do
And
you-
sister, no, yeah, sister and 2 brothers.
Okay. Do you have?
2, 3 brothers.
Two.
2 brothers, yeah.
Do you have any regrets in your life? Perhaps something you wished you had done and hadn't done, or any kind of experience that you regret that you'd like to share with us?
I can't think of any. I probably could have been a little more active in Jewish life, but I was too busy. I was very busy as a general practitioner.
What was the happiest moment of your life?
What?
What was the happiest moment of your life?
My getting married to my wife and having 3 lovely daughters.
How many years were you married to your wife?
What?
How many years were you married?
How many years were you married to Mommy?
Well, figure it out.
I think you were married 65 years.
65.
You got married in
40,
39,
no, 39?
I think so. And then Mommy died in 2002.
About 60 years.
Okay, and what was one of the saddest things, and what are some of the saddest experiences in your life?
Well, you know, one of the other things you were so happy about, you told me that you were, one of the happiest days in your life is when you came home from the war.
Yeah.
That was a very.
Can you tell
Why'd you
us something about that?
When you came
When
home.
you came home from the war?
Well, to see my family again.
Yeah, but
I
tell
was
about the
gone
story.
For 2 years.
Tell about the story.
What story?
When you were on the boat.
Oh, well, I wasn't happy about that. We came back in a boat called the Enterprise. It was a great big ship, aircraft carrier.
Where were you coming from?
From England.
From England to,
And the aircraft
New York.
carrier was a big, did you ever hear of it?
The Enterprise?
The Enterprise was in the Far East, but they converted it into a transfer ship so they brought it over to Europe and put 5,000 soldiers from England to be transferred to America. We were all so happy because we were supposed to get there in 5 days, but yet, because there was a big ship, and to get us from Europe, about halfway along the trip, the biggest storms in 100 years they had in the Atlantic Ocean. And the waves of the ocean were over the decks of the ship, and everyone was seasick. Not everyone. Unfortunately, I wasn't. I helped feed some of these fellows. And they had steel in the front,
The bow.
put into the ship where it was coming apart, you know.
Yeah, to hold it together. And people were like pandemonium broke out.
Yeah.
And what did the captain?
Anyway, we got home.
Well, what did the captain do? That was funny.
Oh, the captain finally got on the loudspeaker and said, he guarantees us that we'll be home we'll reach the United States. He didn't say when.
He guaranteed it.
He guaranteed. And we did. Instead of 5 days, we got here in 10 days. Christmas Eve.
okay. What was the saddest moment of your life?
Oh, I don't have the sad moments. The loss of my wife, my parents, my kin, my two brothers and my sister. I'm the sole survivor.
Okay. All right. Is there something about yourself that no one knows that's interesting? If you had to tell me something interesting about your life or about you as a person.
My wife is an open book. I have no secrets. Everything about me, she knows, and so do all my other kids.
Rusti, is there anything that you would like to share about that's interesting about your dad?
Oh, he's a very interesting character. The really nice thing about my dad is he remembers so much. He has a very excellent memory of all the things that happened to him in his 92 years. And he shares it a lot with his
I used to.
grandchildren and his children.
At one time, I was a chief medical, in charge of the medical department at American Motors body plant in Milwaukee.
Okay.
We had 11,000 employees. I was in for 10 years. They wanted me, it was a part-time job, but I was the head doctor. They wanted me to take it over as full-time, and I didn't want to give up my practice. But every summer when they changed models, we,
Cars.
my wife and I would travel. to Europe. We went to all the different countries, like England,
France.
Germany, Norway, Sweden, where else? was
All
there?
over, France,
Ireland.
Spain, Ireland.
And then I also took some postgraduate courses there too.
How would you like to be remembered?
What?
How,
How would you like to be remembered? What are the things that you would like to have be remembered of you, of your life?
I was just happy when my family, my work,
Your family and your work?
my whole family.
You delivered a lot of kids. You delivered a lot of babies.
I delivered a lot of babies.
do you ever run into somebody that says, oh, my parents used to be...
Right on
We
the
just
elevator.
coming up here,
Oh.
we walked into the building, said, Dr. Hansher, you took a peanut out of my little baby's nose 46 years ago. She said,
Right
I
on the
remember
elevator.
right just now, and it happens. And when my son used to go, when we moved here to Milwaukee from Houston, my son Ervin, who's going to be a rabbi, used to eat breakfast with my dad every Saturday morning at Heinemann's. And after he ate breakfast with his grandpa at Heinemann's every Saturday morning, he would come home and say, Mom, Grandpa knew 21 people at Heinemann's every time it was, and he delivered 6 of them. He would always give a full report as to how many Grandpa knew and how many people he delivered.
It's a nice legacy.
No, we had a lot of fun.
Is there anything that you want to talk about that we haven't covered? Rusty, is there anything about your dad or any experiences that he shared with you?
What?
Some other things you want to talk about? Any other issues in your life that are important to you? I think you were.
No, I had a great enjoyment of my kids, my grandkids, with my grandson, especially Ervin, the one that's going to be a rabbi. He used to often call up his high school and said that he couldn't go to school today. He's got a headache, which wasn't the truth. And
You don't
then,
have to say this on tape, Dad.
he and I would go for stamp humping. I mean, we
No,
buy.
not stamps, baseball cards. It was me who collected stamps.
Oh,
Evan collected
oh,
baseball cards.
baseball cards.
Okay.
We usually went to Waukesha and all over, and I bought Evan. He's still got them. He's got some valuable ones now.
You and Evan had a good time.
Great.
He's going to be a rabbi in 1 year.
Thank you very much for coming
pleasure.
in,
It was a
and
pleasure.
you've really enlightened us with your long life of interest and accomplishment, and thank you very much for sharing
Wow.
it with us.
I was lucky. Had a good wife and some real good kids, and they're all happily married.
That'll
All
do
my
it.
grandkids.
That's good.
One granddaughter is a physician. She's a psychiatrist in New York. And her son's a doctor.
Thank you.
And the other daughter, well, the same one daughter, son is works for the new big plane that they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we could talk some more, but that's enough.
Thank you very much.